Hey, welcome to Friday. You made it through the week. Awesome. I'm Tom Carnell. This is Carnell Knowledge. I'm going to go through the usual movies, books, and records recommendations for you to check out. Real quickly, I was once worked as a buyer for Tower Records, Record Factory, The Warehouse for about 20 years. I wrote and published Carpe Noctem, which was a dark art journal that was available worldwide. I wrote for Fangoria and Dread Central for about 20 years. And I'm now an author, and you can find my books all on Amazon. Remember, this video is shot in one take. There's no edits, there's no cuts, there's no AI. Just stream of consciousness with a couple of notes thrown in. And lastly, if you have something you want to talk to me about, either a product or just a question, go ahead and email me at tomcarnell@gmail.com. We're going to start with a big, weighty thing. Let's call it Westerns versus Easterns. The Japanese Chambara Judegeki, the samurai film, very much drew its influences off of a couple of things. Japanese folklore, Japanese history, but also leaned pretty heavily cinematically on the American Western, and specifically Dashiell Hammett's book, Red Harvest, which I've read, and it's fantastic. Yojimbo was very much based on Red Harvest. Yojimbo further cited things like Fistful of Dollars and Last Man Standing, and it's your typical lone gunslinger / samurai, walks into town, sees an injustice, sets to right it, refuses all compensation, or sometimes not, and then walks on and leads with his life. People will talk a lot about certain actors: Toshiro Mifune in the Kurosawa films, Shintaro Katsu in the Zatoichi films, which there's like 24 of them, and I've not run into one that wasn't fantastic. Tomosaburu Wasayama, who was the main actor in the Lone Wolf and Cub movies. Tetsuya Nakadai, who just recently passed, who is in things like Sword of Doom, which is also fantastic. And the great Takagori Ken, who, the name that doesn't come up a lot is a guy named Ichikawa Reza. He was famous for a series of 12 films called The Sleepy Eyes of Death, aka NEMURI KYOSHIRO. This was a story of a red-headed, not bright red, but reddish headed samurai who was a master of the full moon or full circle killing stroke. And it's very much cut from that same cloth of he would be on the road, see something, get embroiled in some sort of problem, set it to right using his own moral code, and then walk off to forever be alone. Again, there are 12 of these. They ended with the Ichikawa Reza series ended with his death in 1969. And as you can see, there's a whole lot of information on these. You can find them all. Animiego put out a very nice set, or two sets of these. They're great. Stoic hero, dour, tight-lipped, these films usually move pretty quickly. There's not a lot of character development. There doesn't need to be. The man is usually a very moral, again, to his own code, ostracized in some way, but quick on the draw and awesome. I'm going to real quickly run through these titles, and they'll be in the description down there, so you can find them. Some of them are available, as I say, all of them are available through Animigo. Some of them are available through streaming and YouTube. Titles are as follows, and I'm going to go quickly. Number 1, The Chinese Jade. Number 2, Sword of Adventure. 3, Full Circle Killing. 4, Sword of Seduction. 5, Sword of Fire. 6, Sword of Satan. Number 7, Mask of the Princess. 8, Sword of Villainy. 9, Trail of Traps. 10, Hell is a Woman. 11, In the Spider's Lair. And 12, The Castle Menagerie. All of them are great. I just watched Sword of Fire, and it was brilliant. Lots of intrigue, lots of, some of them are bloodier than others. Most don't go full on, like Lone Wolf and Cub, where there's like geysers of blood coming out. The cast of directors are pretty consistent. Chinese Jade was directed by a guy who was an assistant director on things like Rashomon and Yugetsu. But most of these guys did their time on the Hanzo the Razor films, which I covered earlier. The Zatoichi films, which I'll undoubtedly cover at some point. The Lone Wolf and Cubs. Let's see. Yeah, that kind of a thing. They did their time doing more Chambara films, which are Japanese sword dramas, as opposed to Judageki, which are just Japanese like sort of palace intrigue dramas. They are very similar to the Chinese wushu or wuxia, and they are all fantastic. I do highly recommend these. If you're a completist like me, it'll be a chunk of time. I mean, I'm a guy that systematically went through all of the 24, 26 Zatoichi films. I own all of the Lone Wolf and Cub stuff. I'm a big fan. And I just realized earlier that it's probably where my love of, oddly, the American Western came from. Having seen it first through Japanese cinema, because I grew up around a place that had a great Japanese theater. And then later got into the Western kind of a thing. It's good stuff. It's slightly different, but you will quickly become a fan. One of the highlights of my relationship with my father-in-law was we would always sit down. There was a TV station that would run Samurai Saturdays, and they would run just great samurai films every Saturday morning, and we would sit and watch them together and cheer when we needed to, and weep when somehow he was betrayed. So, excuse me. Great stuff. Again, the series is called, referred to in the West as The Sleepy Eyes of Death, and I highly recommend it. That cut was because I coughed. So check that out if you can, if you are of a mind. Again, they're a area that doesn't get talked about a lot in Japanese cinema. Not the Chambara, but specifically the Sleepy Eyes of Death films. They're fantastic, and I highly recommend it. Our second film is from 1957. This is the film I first saw on Bob Wilkins' Creature Features when I was just a lad. It's called Monolith Monsters, directed by John Sherwood and starring Grant Williams and Les Tremayne, the great Les Tremayne. Has to do with a meteor that lands in the middle of the desert. It is found by a teacher and her children's students. It is brought home, a chunk of it is brought home by one of the girls whose mother calls it a dirty rock and throws it into water. It turns out immersion in water or exposure to water of any kind makes these things grow at an exponential rate. It's fantastic. It's kind of, in a weird way, what I'm going to call a big bug movie like they used to have in the 50s with like Them and those kind of things. But instead of a bug, we've got this meteor from space. Absolutely fantastic. Our third film from 2020. This is a film called Caveat, directed by Damien McCarthy, starring Ben Kaplan and Johnny French. It has to do with a lone drifter who's suffering from partial memory loss, who accepts a job to look after a psychologically troubled woman in an abandoned house on an isolated island. It has one of the creepiest toys you'll ever see, of a rabbit that beats a drum whenever something weird is going to happen. The woman, her condition is such that she doesn't want to be around people, is afraid of people. So our intrepid lone drifter must wear a vest that with the chain on it that keeps him from her, other than to cook for her and to see to her health. But getting too close to her is an impossibility. It's really good. I didn't expect much. I saw it recommended by Patton Oswalt on Letterboxd's Pick 4, along with a couple of other things, which I will mention at some point. But it was really fantastic. I didn't see the end coming. I enjoyed it, the ride throughout. And there you have it. The film, again, caveat, it's available on Tubi. So check that out if you have a chance. Up next, I'm going to cheat a little and name 2 films. There was a director in Italy called Luciano Ercoli, who did a couple of films with an actress, Nieves Navarro, aka Susan Scott. The first one was from 1971. It's called La Morte Camina con I Tacchi Alti, aka Death Walks on High Heels. And then in 1972, La Morte Accarezza a Mezzanotte, Death Walks at Midnight. They're very much giallos. The first one, Death on High Heels, is after a French stripper is harassed by a man who wants a cache of diamonds stolen by her late father. She flees to England in the company of a doctor, but danger follows. Death Walks at Midnight, during a drug-fueled photo shoot, a model witnesses a brutal murder in an apartment opposite hers and is forced to become an amateur sleuth to solve it. They're fantastic. They're very much a giallo, very much a black glove killer film. Susan Scott is great. She's beautiful. She's plucky. She's intrepid. And they're directed with aplomb. So again, if you are a giallo fan, people will mention like the Argento films and a couple of others, but very rarely does the name Luciano Ercoli come up. But it's the bomb, and you should definitely check it out. Our last film is from 2005. And it is making a tour, I understand, of some of the art houses to America. It's kind of a resurgence. It's called Linda, 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 directed by Nobushiro Yamashita, starring Bae Doona and Aki Maeda. It has to do with a group of high school girls that get together to form a band to play the titular song, Linda, 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 at a school festival. Has to do with them learning. Some of them learning their instruments, some of them teaching each other how to be a band. And it's just a good time. It's a warm, wonderful film. It's perfect for kids, maybe not children, because they won't get some of it, but preteens and teen girls will eat this up. It's very much forming a team kind of a thing. And then their final victorious presentation of the song at the school festival just fires on all cylinders. This is great stuff. It's well shot. It's really well acted, and I highly recommend it. So there we go. Those are movies. Moving on to books. A couple of things I'm reading right now. I'm about a third of the way through the John Tuska edited Star Western. Star Western was a magazine that ran from 1933 to 1954, and they're westerns. They're more lantern-jawed heroes, and they're quick guns getting involved in things, and very much similar to the Chambara that I mentioned with Sleepy Eyes of Death. I just picked up, as a result of Anthony Jeselnik's review on his YouTube channel. He's doing a book club that's really fantastic. Of Jim Thompson's The Getaway. The Getaway was made into a film twice, once with Steve McQueen, once with Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger. And his presentation of the story kind of denotes that they cut off, for the films, they cut off this really dark last act that I'm very curious about. So I picked it up for a song on my Kindle, and I'll be checking that out. A couple of other things I want to recommend to you. The writer's name is Dale Bailey. He has two short story collections. One is called The Resurrection Man's Legacy, and the other one is called The End of Everything. I was blown away by this guy. Specifically, The Resurrection Man's Legacy it's one of the most touching stories you'll ever read about baseball. You know how like Stephen King talks about baseball and he really, from the heart, really feels it and deeply loves it? That's what this is. I highly recommend it. There's a great story about the creature from the Black Lagoon in this that is very, not only amusing, but very poignant. Very much enjoyed it. Highly recommend it. This is a guy who, if I see him do another short story collection, I'll buy it like that. Absolutely fantastic. After that, let's see. John Joseph Adams edited a book called Dead Man's Hand. There is a subgenre of horror story called, that I often refer to as weird Western. Hey, it's a horror story that takes place in battle. Typified, there's a great Korean movie that you might want to check out called R Point. You can find it here and there and other places. You know, a team of soldiers go in to carry out a mission, and they run into ghosts or a creature. It's kind of like, imagine Predator, but more subtle. It's great stuff. This is all I lost my train of thought. I apologize. It's great stuff. It's called Dead Man's Hand. Highly recommended. And then finally, I'm going to recommend, there's a writer named Earl Der Biggers. He's most famous for writing the Charlie Chan stories. Specifically, I'm going to recommend Behind That Curtain. It's the third Charlie Chan movie. It's written in the 20s and the 30s, so it can get a little dicey when it comes to racial portrayals, but it's a fantastic read, and I highly recommend it. So there you go, books. I kind of lost my train of thought there on the weird Western, weird war thing. Let's see, records. I'm gonna go buzz through these. First off, 2026, the artist is Charlotte Day Wilson. The album is called Patchwork. They are a Canadian R&B singer. The record is soulful, rich, and exhilarating. I very much enjoyed this one. Reminded me of things like Bad, Bad, Not Good, Daniel Caesar, Salt, which are a great band, and the great Cleo Soul. Very soulful, like I say, but very, very, very cool. Highly recommended. And again, all of these are going to be available on Spotify and YouTube, so check those out. Second one, 2025, the artist is Simon Harady, a French musician. The album is called Hard Lounge. This is late night jazz, very easy on the ears. Reminded me of things like Indie Zone and Maat, M-A-A-T. Something to put on after work and maybe a dinner, and just, chilling out. It's great stuff, and I came upon it via, every week I check new releases, and I had no idea what it was, but I clicked on it and went with it. Following that, 2025, the soundtrack to the Brendan Fraser film Rental Family. It's by Jonesy and Alex Summers. Jonesy is one of the artists in Sigur Rós. Alex Summers is a producer who did things like Juliana Barwick's record and a few other things. This is lovely. I adored this record. Atmospheric, very sweet, introspective, with just a touch of Japanese music influences in it. The film has to do with an American who goes and sort of signs to a service to rent himself out as a sort of dad figure for different families. This is fantastic. This is good for any time during the day. It was good enough that it made me want to search out more of both of these artists, Jonesy and Alex Summers. Let's see, up next, 2008. The artist is named Tommy Guerrero. He's a guitarist. The album is called Return of the Bastard. Guerrero is an American skateboarder, composer, and musician. Was in the band Free Beer, which is one of the greatest band titles of all time, and other punk era bands. This is kind of if you threw rock, hip hop, funk, soul, and jazz into a hopper and sort of mixed them all up. This reminded me of things like Baltus, Arc de Soleil, and a band called Off the Wally. It's great stuff. He's not a shredder, but he's definitely something that I think you should probably check out. Following that, I was watching an episode of Amoeba's show, What's in My Bag, and they had Spinal Tap on, and Michael McKean recommended a guy named C6 Steve. The record is from 2015, and it's called You Can't Teach an Old Dog New Tricks. He's an American blues musician, uses handmade, personalized guitars, kind of like, stringing strings on a 2x4 and slapping a pickup on it and using that with a slide. If you're familiar with the very avant-garde work of Fred Frith, it's kind of like that. Steve produced one of the Modest Mouse records. He's like a Modest Mouse records. It struck me at first listen, like, if you've ever been on someplace and there's been a street performer that just is mind-bogglingly good, that's what this guy reminded me of. He's not a burner. It's more of a just songwriter and presentation and like a story to tell. Reminded me of things like Jack Broadbent and if you know Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band. Good stuff, soulful, kind of Americana in a weird way, but absolutely fantastic. Again, C6 Steve. Say that 10 times fast. Next up, 2025. This one really blew me away. Everyone knows the subsequent career of Daryl Hall from Hall & Oates. Well, John Oates has released a couple of records. This is his 7th solo record. And this one is called Oates. It's got kind of a drawn cover. It's very much like old Hall & Oates. I'm not talking about like Maneater and Kiss on My List and all that other poppy stuff. I'm talking before that, Abandoned Luncheonette and the first couple of records. I was blown away by how good this was. The musicianship is good. The songwriting is good. It reminded me, you could put it up into a hopper with things like Paul Carrick's solo work, Boss Gags, Donald Fagen. It's great. I really like the early Hall & Oates stuff much more than I like the later Hall & Oates stuff. But this is fantastic. And again, highly recommended. After that, 2025, the band is called Dissolve, Dezolve. The record is their 10th anniversary concert. This is a Japanese fusion band formed in 2014 with active session musicians. It's high energy. It's original fusion. Absolutely electrifying. It reminded me of things like Cassiopeia and their drummer Akira Jimbo. It reminded me of the Nankai Trio, which I've covered recently. This is fantastic. Top drawer musicianship. The songwriting is great. It's very technical, but still completely listenable. And I'm going to highly recommend that as well. Just a couple more here. 2020, the band is called Il Tempio della Clessidre. They're an Italian prog band from Genoa. They very much draw inspiration from 70s prog bands like Banco del Mutuo Soccorso, PFM, Goblin, La Maschera de Sera, Logos, Il Bacio della Medusa, that kind of stuff. The music is highly syncopated and expertly played, and just great. They were a complete surprise. I had heard them discussed on someone else's YouTube channel they were talking about Italian prog rock. I'd never heard of them. So I wrote it down and went out and looked it up. Fantastic, just fantastic. Two more. Band is called Dust Lights. Record is called In a Stillness. It's from 2018. This is their debut record. Very much ambient, kind of deep listening kind of stuff. Airy and perfect for like late night, about to go to bed, maybe getting into bed and doing some reading or what have you. Fantastic. It reminded me of things like Portishead, Tortoise, Morphine, Taknada, Eyebrow, if you're familiar with Eyebrow. Fantastic. Nothing, no one's off in a hurry. No one's running to the races. It is very much relaxing, beautiful. It's like an inspirational kind of music. Again, Dust Lights, In a Stillness. And then finally, we're going to go with a 2025 record by Danzon El Gato. It's called El Sonido Bastardo. It's their first album. They're from Madrid. It's very much jazz, funk, and roots. The echoes of North African music, of the tropics, of Latin America. And it too is inspired by a lot of 70s library music and golden era hip hop. Reminded me of things like the Bombillas, Swans. I recently discussed Pierpoint and Hegelson. Mark Truffaut is another one. And then another band I just found out that I will probably be talking about here in the future, Orgasmo Sonore. Terrific. It has that 70s vibe, that sort of, funky but soulful, very groovy kind of vibe. But it's just fantastic. The band again, Danzon El Gato. And that is about gonna do it for me. Again, look in the description for a whole roster of everything we've discussed, and there'll be links to all the records so that you can hear them for yourself. Don't just take my word for it. But yeah, the takeaway on this one, more than anything else, besides everything else, is the Sleepy Eyes of Death. They are fantastic films, and I think they deserve more attention. Head over to my webpage at tomcarnell.com/KMRE. There's 200 hours of a radio show I did for a local radio station. And that's just good time fun. There's audio clips from movies and what have you, and TV shows there, along with a lot of varied kinds of music. Check out while you're at my website, check out the other pages. You'll see there are YouTube clips. There's the Drinking with the Boondock Saints video. There's an interview with Sam Trammell. There's an interview with George Romero. There's a bunch of pages in all my books. And then head over to Amazon if you want to pick any of those up. Let's see. Finally, my latest book is Monolith Records. It has to do with working in a record store in 1985. It's not horror. It's very much sort of sweet and kind of a romantic comedy. And it's essentially how I met my wife. The reviews have been very kind. A lot of them have come from people who were actually there. And they were very complimentary, and I'm grateful for that. That's going to do it. Please like, comment, and share. Smash that like button, all that other things they say. I'm trying to get the viewership of this channel up, so please do me a favor and let some people know if you can. I would greatly appreciate it. I really appreciate you all tuning in and keeping up with the show. I plan to add some things. I'm planning to subtract some things. At this point, it's just about getting the information out. My love language is to share things, and that's what this show is. So until then, have a good weekend, and we will see you on Monday.